So to kind of give a little idea of what the goal of today's stream is, when it comes to identity, there's two main parts of identity. There's authentication and there's authorization. Authentication is the process of figuring out if someone is who they say they are. And that's done by logging in, username, password, multi-factor authentication, that kind of stuff. And the second part of identity is authorization, which is the process of after you've authenticated somebody, what are they allowed to have access to? What permissions, what resources do they have access to after they've authenticated? Today, the goal is to just talk about the first part, which is authentication. So authenticating a Gatsby site, we're going to add a login, logout functionality, and then we're going to show data from the user that's logged in onto the page. And this is the app that we're going to be working with today. I'm going to post in the chat the repo that we're following along. It is going to be easy. Don't worry. It's going to be super easy, Brad.
Yeah.
So this I posted it. Did I post it in the chat? Yeah, it went through. Great. So if you want to follow along with us today, you can go to this repo and clone it. And then if you check out to the, let's see, which branch is it? It's the, maybe I haven't pushed it up here yet. I need to push it up. This master here has all of the code that we're going to be working on, so you can follow along if you want to. So that's the app there. But looking at it, once you Gatsby develop and Gatsby install everything, this is what it's going to look like. So basically, it's just kind of showing some static data that James, who also works at Auth0, and I have put together, just to give us something to work with. So there's just some info here, and you can filter it based on clicking on these tabs. But right now, there's no authentication to it. It's just this basic app.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, today we're going to add the authentication part to it. And what's really going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for us today is we're going to use a Gatsby recipe. Obinna, do you want to talk about Gatsby recipes?
Oh, for sure. So Gatsby recipes comes like as an answer to the question of how do I do X, or how do I carry out the specific function with Gatsby. Mostly we have like recipes in the documentation, but because like we're always looking to make the lives of our users easier, we have like created this CLI command where you just run Gatsby recipes and whatever it is you're trying to add to your application. So if you just run Gatsby recipes, like if you're trying to add TypeScript to your application and you do a Gatsby recipes TypeScript, it will just show you a list of commands where you just click enter and then TypeScript is set up. In this example, we'll see how to add Auth0 to the application. So yeah, it's also built. So you can also build your own recipe because like it's built with Markdown and React. So yeah.
Yeah. So I posted a link in the chat that kind of talks about this Gatsby recipes. It's super cool. Like Obinna was saying, like it's basically a way to automate a bunch of stuff that you need to do. It kind of goes further than just a custom plugin. Like this will actually install npm packages. It'll create files in your index inside of your root folder. Like it does a lot of automation for you. All you have to do is just push enter into your command in your terminal. Yep. You'll see that there's a lot of already pre-created recipes in there. Like Chris on code, Chris says Tailwind is an option. So if you just do Gatsby recipes Tailwind, it'll automatically add that to your app. At least all the basic functionality you need to have Tailwind into your Gatsby site. We're working with Kyle at Gatsby right now to get an Auth0 one. So all you have to do is just do Gatsby recipes Auth0. Hopefully that comes out here soon. But in the meantime, I put together a recipe that we're going to just run here. I forked it from Kyle Gill, who works at Gatsby as well. He was working on what's that?
I said K2. That's a nickname for Kyle.
Oh, gotcha. So yeah, I forked one that he created a couple weeks ago. This one was running an older version of the SDK that the Auth0 package we're working with. So, and I made some tweaks to go along with what we're talking about today. And there was a little issue with the build, so I've kind of made some tweaks to his and updated some stuff. So this one is one that I personally created. I'm going to post it in the chat here. Yeah, Brad, there isn't an official Auth0 one yet, but actually Obinna was talking to Kyle today with Gatsby about getting that published. So it will be there soon, but there's not one just yet.
Yeah, just to add that recipes is still like an experimental feature, so we're still adding a lot of stuff. So currently it doesn't support Node version 13, but like it will soon enough.
Yeah, and the problem with GIST is you can't like PR them, right? So like they're you have to update them, and then when you do update the GIST, the URL actually changes, so it's not really maintainable. So that it's still in the beta version, right? We're still working out how to use them the best way, but as of right now, you can use this GIST, and that's what I'm gonna be using today to add the Auth0 recipe in there.
Yeah.
And like you said, like there's gonna be a lot of stuff that this recipe is going to add in there. So a lot of Auth0 boilerplates, creating a new example account page that we can work with, yeah, and so on. So let's go ahead and just do this. So this is the code that we're working with, and the way that I'm going to do that is inside of your terminal, just say Gatsby recipes, and then I need to copy the raw version of this gist.
Yeah.
When I run this, it's going to automate everything that I had in that gist. So I think there's 6, 7, 8 steps in here. And all I have to do is press enter. And it's going to go through each one of my steps I've outlined and add all the code and all the information I need to, so I can just instantly be 90% of the way there. So the first step, so there's 8 steps. The first step I'm going to do is install the Auth0 spa.js package. And while that's going, I'll say that I'm just going to push enter a bunch of times and go through all the steps really quickly. And then we're going to look at the code that I added inside of VS Code.
Yeah. So before Gatsby recipes, you would have to like go through the documentation to go look at these steps and set it up by yourself. But like with recipes, all you need to do is just hit enter a bunch of times, and then it sets up all the files for you.
Yeah, which is really cool. Like I mentioned, the recipe will write files, it'll create files. It can even install npm packages. Like it's super easy. It takes a lot of like Obinna saying, like you don't have to go to the docs and like install things and just wish that it works. Let's see, we've got a question. Will this become the official recipe for Auth0? Possibly. I'm sure we'll make some more tweaks to it. It's still in the beta phase. We're still kind of experimenting with this, so we'll have to see.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a question for you, but when a recipe points to GitHub, does it have to be an MDX file?
Well, yeah. So because like the files there are they're MDX files, because like it's a mixture of like if you've used MDX, you know that it's like being able to use React components in Markdown. So yeah, the files for now might probably have to be an MDX file because it installs the code for you. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, let's look at the changes that were added. So you see that just by running that recipe, we've got some stuff in here. The simple things to talk about is we added, let's close this. We added just the Auth0 spa package to our package JSON.
Yeah.
We've got, and then if we look at the code, you'll notice that it created a plugins folder here for local plugins.
Yeah. Yeah. So
go ahead.
So yeah. So like with local plugins, basically it's kind of like how you would usually do like an npm install, then the name of the plugin. But like with local plugins, it's kind of like when you want to have your be able to like edit the files of like your plugin code. So you like leave it in the same you leave it in a plugin folder in your application. So that's why it's called a local plugin. But like you can also have like a source plugin or a transformer plugin. So the naming convention is just to show what it does. So that's why this is called like a local plugin.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another way of like abstracting away complex logic, and then you can reference this stuff inside of your app. And that's what we're going to be doing today.
Yeah.
So you'll see here we've added 4 packages. We got our package JSON, which is just empty. Those are required for local plugins. Our index page is just importing and exporting out whatever we've got inside this auth file. And this is where a lot of the code for setting up our Auth0 SDK is going to go. And so inside of here, there's a lot going on inside of this auth.js file. And a lot of it is going to be the boilerplate needed to create your Auth0 client and work with the functionality that comes with using the Auth0 SDK inside of your app. And this code that you'll see inside of this that comes with this auth.js file inside of the local plugin is all inside of the React Auth0 Quick Start Guide docs. And so this is for the most part, a copy and paste from the Quick Start Guide, where we've got a lot of code set up in here. And I'm going to walk through this code and talk a little bit about it, but don't feel like you need to understand everything that's going on in here. It's more of a boilerplate, like setup things. Eventually, the React, our SDK team here at Auth0 is actually working on extracting this away and putting it into a package, so it doesn't need to be set up at all inside of a Gatsby app. Yeah, so all of this is going to be taken away anyways and put in and abstracted out into an npm package, and that should be coming out here soon. We've been getting updates on that, so eventually you won't need to worry about this. But if you're curious, I do want to just kind of talk about what's going on in here and at a high level, like what's going on inside of this auth.js file. So the first thing we'll see is we're passing a default context because we're going to be using context in React here. We want to abstract all of the Auth0 boilerplate code here into context, and so that we can create a custom hook that uses this context. And if we want to be able to pull this into our app anywhere inside of our app, all we have to do is destructure the values that get passed to the value prop of our provider. And this is going to wrap over all the children in our app. So anywhere inside of our app, we can reference this custom Auth0 hook that we're creating at the top of this file, and then we have access to stuff like this. So we have bool is authenticated. We've got a user object, loading, pop-up open, and then functions that we can use to log in, log out, get tokens from our app. And everything inside of everything above this is kind of the logic for making this possible. So we've got a bunch of state that's keeping track of our Auth0 client. It's keeping track of creating and setting up the loading, and also the user. Once they've logged in, we're able to access a little bit about that user, like their email and their name, that kind of stuff. And so again, a lot of this code is just setting up the boilerplate needed to work with the React SDK inside of your app.
Gotcha.
And then all this code is actually implemented inside of this Gatsby browser page. Do you want to talk a little bit about what this Gatsby browser page is?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the Gatsby browser is like part of like the API files that gives you like control over like the way the Gatsby application behaves in the browser. So for example, if you're handling like stuff like a user changing routes or calling a function that when a user first opens a page, like that would be, you put that in the Gatsby browser.
And so Brad's asking, does this export a use Auth0 hook as well? So the Gatsby browser, and maybe you can talk a bit like why are we using wrap group element and why are we exporting this out?
Yeah, so we're using like the wrap group elements because like it's useful to put like any provider components that would like wrap your application for when like setting persistent UI elements like around pages. So that's like basically where you add that.
Yeah, so inside of here, we're importing the provider from our auth page, and we're wrapping element, which we get from this wrap group element. This is specific to Gatsby browser pages. Whenever you go through the build process of Gatsby, it knows to look for this exact export, and it passes what options we have here, this element and this plugin options.
Yeah.
And yeah, Brad, so the actual hook, I'll go back and talk about it again. So the actual hook that we're going to be using is, and you found it there, is this one right here. So this use Auth0 hook is going to be used inside of our app. And you're going to see this as we move through here. It's used inside of our app to destructure the values. As you can see here, all these values that we can use from this hook. James says in regular React, you wrap your stuff with a provider, but in Gatsby, the only way to get access to that is this wrap root element function.
Root element, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Cool. So that's the Gatsby browser. That's the Auth0 page. Do you want to talk, kind of explain what the Gatsby node and Gatsby config files are for? We just talked about Gatsby browser. So what about these two files?
Yeah, so the Gatsby config basically is where you add like the plugins that you're using in your sites, common definitions, stuff like site metadata, like stuff that spans across like the platform, or stuff that has to do with like integrating Gatsby's GraphQL data layer, so that whatever you put in the Gatsby browser can be like called using the Gatsby GraphQL data layer. The Gatsby node is like another of the API files that allows you to like respond to like events in Gatsby's build cycle. So for example, adding pages dynamically, editing GraphQL nodes, most of that stuff. Those are like examples of what you can do with that file.
Cool. So yeah, these files are like specific to the environment that you're working with, like the node, the browser, and then the config gives you some obviously config options that you can work with.
Yeah.
And if you'll notice, back inside of our Gatsby browser, let me close this. We're getting some plugin options as a param here. And then those plugin options are passed through to the Auth0 provider. So for the domain, we've got that. And the client ID, we've got the client ID off of plugin options. And this is actually coming from the root Gatsby config file. It's coming from this Gatsby plugin Auth0 options object here. It's getting the domain and client ID. And when I said that the recipe gets you 90% of the way there of having Auth0 in your app ready to go, this is the 10% that you need to do on your part in order to finish adding Auth0 to your app. And so what this is you need to actually create an account with Auth0. And so once you create an account, you need to give this domain and client ID to your app. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm already logged in, but I'm going to step away, just make sure nothing's shown here. But I'm already logged in. If you don't have an account with Auth0, it's super easy. It'll take you 5 minutes to sign up. And you can get a free version just to kind of tick around with stuff, but not a lot of stuff, but just the basics. So here I've logged in. And what you need to do once you've logged in, let me open this all the way. You want to go to the applications page and create a new application. You can see that I've already created one, but when you create a new application, there's different options of what you can work with. So there's a single page app, regular web apps, machine to machine, and native. Today we're going to be working with single page web app. After you create it, it's going to take you to a page like this, where you can kind of a quick start guide where you can kind of choose which language you want to work with.
Oh yeah. So which one we obviously use like the React.
Yeah. So right now we're working with the React version here.
Yeah. So it's this, I think this would be a good way to like point out that because like Gatsby is like it's like a server-side render framework for React. Anything you could like do with like React, you could also do that with Gatsby. So Gatsby is not just like a static site generator in the sense that only renders static sites. So you could also add like app-like functionalities, and we're going to use like the React configurations to like work with Gatsby.
Yeah. Yeah, so once you've clicked on whatever you want to click on, it'll kind of send you back to those quick start guides that I showed you beforehand. What it's going to walk you through adding the provider and updating, wrapping your elements, your root elements with that provider, and so on. But inside of the settings here is where we need to go. So notice that when you create a new app, we're going to get a domain, a client ID, client secret, and then some other stuff in here that we can customize. What we're looking for is the domain. So I'm going to copy this domain. I'm going to put it back as a value here. And then I'm going to grab the client ID and put it here.
So why do we put this in the Gatsby config instead of like in a .env file?
Yeah, that's a good question. So like the client, the domain and client ID aren't secret. You can definitely put it in an env file. Excuse me. And reference it that way. But these two values aren't secret. They're actually in the URL whenever you click login. So it's something that's it's public facing already. You don't have to put it in env, but in this case, it's just put here inside of this Gatsby config to use.
Oh, gotcha.
Definitely don't want to share this client secret one, which is you can see is obviously secret.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. All right. So after you've got your domain and client ID, there's three other boxes at a minimum we have to update to get this to work. So those boxes are passing our domain, which is localhost 8000, as an allowed callback URL, as an allowed logout URL, and allowed web origin. So the allowed callback URL, basically after we log in, after we authenticate, we want to specify which URLs we're allowed to redirect to. And then the allowed logout URL is which URL we're allowed to redirect to after we've logged out. And then if we want to, after we've logged in and we've authenticated, if we refresh the page, we want to allow Auth0 to check any kind of sessions that are still running and automatically keep us signed in. If not, then if we don't have it here, then you're going to get an error if you refresh your page after logging in.
Yeah.
So go ahead and add these two values, grab your domain and client ID, and then you're ready to rock and roll.
Oh, awesome.
There are a bunch of other options on the side here. I mentioned that next week, James and actually Obinna are actually going to be talking about the authorization part of this, and they're going to be diving more into like the API section and how to work with the authorization at that point. But there's a lot of other stuff that you can do to customize your Auth0 experience.
Can't wait.
All right, let's move this back.
Yeah.
Cool. So we've got all that stuff in there. Let's see. We've saved it. All right. Let's go ahead and just run this and see what we've got to work with. So while that's running, I'll reload this. Let's see. Did I miss anything? Oh, there's one other thing I forgot to talk about.
Yeah.
So it's the actual page that got created with the recipe. So we've got example account. This page is put automatically in the pages folder, and so this is going to be created for us.
Yeah, and every file that's created in the pages folder automatically becomes a route. So like those are like one of the superpowers of Gatsby.
Yeah, it's definitely a superpower. All I have to do is create a file inside of the pages folder, and it automatically creates this page, which is sweet.
Yeah.
Just reading the chat. Okay, cool. So
yeah, I see.
Inside the example account page, you can see that it's nothing too crazy is happening here, but we are using that Auth0 hook, that custom hook that we created inside the local plugin folder. So this is accessing that context that we set up, that was all the boilerplate of working with the SDK, and we're able to just destructure some really cool values that we can work with. So like is authenticated, loading, log out, user, and log in with pop-up. So we have these already at our fingertips with our custom hook, and we can just throw them into our code. So the first thing you'll see is that we have a loading option here just to return loading. And then inside of our page, it's basically just a ternary switch if we're authenticated, which is just an easy true false. If we are, we're going to just add the ability to log out, and we're going to JSON stringify the user object that we get when someone authenticates. If not, then it's going to be a login with pop-up option on this page.
Yeah.
So there's no navigation here on the home page. So if I just manually go to example account, will load. Oh, I am already logged in. Let's try it again.
Okay.
So here's what you'll get the first time you're logging in. Just the login button. Obviously no styles or anything. And if I click
Yeah.
login, we're going to get the pop-up. And this is how I'm going to authenticate with Auth0. So I can either sign up if I don't have an account, which will ask for a username and password. It'll ask you to authorize the use of your information for the app, and then it'll redirect us back to this page.
Yep.
Yeah, and we'll notice that I'm JSON stringifying my user data, which is basically just my nickname, my name, email, a gravatar that's associated with my email, and some other information here. So we have this just, and that's honestly it for authenticating with a Gatsby recipe. You run the Gatsby recipe, it does all the heavy lifting for you, and then you go into your Auth0 account, add that domain to those 3 spots, and then copy over your domain and client ID to that Gatsby config file. And then right off the bat, you've already got the option of working with this authentication here. All right, let's see. Does loading indicate loading status only for authentication? That's correct, Brad. Yeah, it's specific to just the Auth0 loading. Yeah. Okay. James already beat me to that. Maybe Tyler can talk through what's going on with that loading property. Yeah. So the loading this is coming. Oh yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. If we go back to the local plugin.
Yeah.
Let's look at that again. So the auth.js file. So just to backtrack, so we have this loading, which is here. So we're just using a usestate loading set loading, and this gets updated a few different places. Basically, whenever we init auth0, it's going to initially set loading, go from it is initially false. It's going to go to true once we're done with all of our setup of the client. And I believe there's one other spot. No, that's it. So it's just whenever we initialize the auth0, checking to see if we're loading or not. Let's see. Yes, we are using someone to transcribe this for us.
Yeah.
Let's see. Real-time cat sounds very accessible. Cool. Sweet.
Thanks.
All right, so that's that. Any other questions? Definitely throw them in the chat. Happy to go through and
Yeah.
talk more in depth about all this stuff.
Oh, shoot.
So once that's in there, let's take this one step further. So right now we don't have a navigation, right? The only way that I can actually log in is by going to /example account. But let's go ahead and throw navigation up there, and then let's adjust the account page to only show data if we're logged in. So for example, right now I can go to example account, and it's going to load the page. Whether I'm logged in, logged out, we're going to load the page. But what if I wanted to kind of protect this page where I don't want to show anything, basically render null, unless they're logged in? And if they're not logged in, I just want to automatically redirect them to log in. This is kind of like a protection security thing. I want to protect this page. And so first things first, let's actually
navigation.
Set up the navigation. Do you want to take that step?
Oh yeah, for sure. Is that? Can you check if?
Yeah, I'm following along with you.
Okay. Am I able to edit this? Navigation.
Let's see.
Can you check that? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, cool. So I'm just going to go this and paste that in there. So basically, what this does is, so we import I'm going to create this file now. Let me create the index module .css. All right, cool. So basically, what this nav.js does is it checks for it destructures this from the use auth function, and then checks if you're not authenticated and this is not loading, you get a display of login and then the home link. But then So whenever you click like on login, it works with this on click function to log in with redirect. So it redirects you to like the URL for the authentication. And then when you are authenticated, if it is authenticated is true, it's basically pushes you to the routes that you're going to, and then shows you logouts, and then the gives you access to my account. So can we check if this works? I'm going to have to add this to the index.js.
Yeah.
I'm going to add this to the index.js, so that works. So we're going to import navigation. Just going to get this from here. Okay. From Let's get that from just get this.
Cool. So we've got our navigation
All right, cool.
component.
Yep. I'm just gonna call that in here. Also, sweet. Now we have navigation added to the page. So
Yeah, I've
let's
got some
leave.
styles as well. Let me throw in some CSS to make it look pretty as well.
Oh, cool.
So I add that
Awesome.
you created the index module CSS. And as you can tell, we're using
Yeah.
CSS modules for this.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Let's see.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we've got our nav here. We've got our login button. We've got our home page. And so if I click login from here, you'll notice that I don't get a pop-up now, but I'm actually redirecting to that domain that I put in the config. And it's also using the client ID in this URL as well. And so this is, if you remember, when you use the Gatsby recipe, it's using the pop-up version. So that's where it just kind of opens up a little modal type thing on the page. But what we worked with this time is the login with redirect function. This is going to actually redirect you using your config options and take you to this page here. One thing I know you're going to ask me about, Obinna, is like how to customize this page.
Oh yeah, sorry. So when you're working with like Auth0, do I always have to have this Auth0 logo and like the color stuff? Can I like customize the pop-up? So
Yeah, for sure. In fact, I like just like the on the homepage of Auth0, I think like the one of the opening GIFs is like, if I remember correctly, the different options of what you can have that look like.
oh wow.
Maybe not.
I
But
have
anyways, maybe it's not on the mobile. Oh yeah, here you go. So like there
oh
are
yeah.
definitely ways you can like change the color and the logo and make it look more like your brand or the site that you're working with.
Yeah.
And let me show you where to go for that. Actually, I'll keep this open. So back inside of your application details, again, all of the stuff that you want to do to like really make this your own app and your identity provider is going to be here inside of your dashboard. And you're going to want to go to this universal login page. And here's where you can kind of choose the experience that you're going to be working with. Classic or new. You can add a logo and some colors. Let's add the Gatsby purple. So we can really make this our own
so
here.
make it the Gatsby colors.
This is the Gatsby co-stream here. So we've got is it white? Just let's see.
Oh yeah.
Did I miss an F? Okay, there we go. So we got white and purple. Let's see how that looks. So that's how you can do it kind of like at a high level, but if you want to actually like get into the code, you can go to the login page, this login tab, and you can actually mess with styles specifically yourself. So if you're handy, you can go in there and like really update some stuff in here. And there's even our preview page you can kind of see. So there you go. Oh, our button's actually all white. Our button's white.
Our button's white.
So that's probably not going to work.
Let's go. Let's go back to the.
I'll just make it black then.
Yeah.
Let's see what that looks like.
Let's see.
All right. That's better. That's better at least.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So yeah, so now this is what our experience is gonna be like. We could change the logo and
The
stuff,
logo.
but yeah, you can really customize how you want this to look by just clicking into here and messing with the styles.
Oh, awesome.
All right, so going back to where we were. So after we sign in, now with our itinerary in place for our navigation, we're gonna have a logout option. We're gonna have a home page, and now we have a my account. So we can go to this page by this navigation. Oh, and we need to, I forgot that we need to change
we need to like
change this.
the name of the file.
Okay, cool. So I changed the recipe is going to say example account just want to make sure that it doesn't clash with anything. But if you're using this, obviously you're going to want to update this a little bit.
Update the name.
Yeah, and so once we updated the page, we have to rebuild. And why is that? You want to tell us that?
Yeah. So every time you run a Gatsby develop, Gatsby bundles everything that you've like imputed in your file and then like puts a whole package of it. So every time you like edit something, you need to like rebuild so that it can have like the fresh version of what you have.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, so once we've logged in, we have access to that account page is going to automatically show us that information here. But let's go for this next part. Let's do the protected part. Like, let's make this page only show if they're logged in. So basically, I don't want to see. So if I just go right to the example page right now.
Yeah.
Oh, not that way.
Oh.
I changed it.
The name.
So if I go to this page, I can hit it, right? Like, it's telling me to log in because I've hit it. But I don't want that. I want it to just say automatically redirect me if I'm not logged in. Or show me data if I am logged in. And so the way that we're going to do that is, let me close this stuff. I'm going to go to just our components folder. And I'm going to make a new file called protected
routes.
Route, yeah. Cool. And then here, what we want, like if we just stop and think about like, what do we want to have happen with this? I think basically go ahead.
No, you go.
Basically, we want to have like a component that is, whenever it mounts, we want to check our Auth0 custom hook and see if we're authenticated or not. If we are, then render children or render something. If we're not authenticated, then render null. Like basically show nothing and then instantly redirect us to log in. And that's going to look like this. So we have just use effect from React. We're referencing our custom hook that we have. And then we're creating like this component called protected route. It's going to take children. And then notice that we're going to be working with 3 options from our custom hook. Loading again, if they're authenticated, and the function to actually redirect them to go log in.
Yeah.
So inside of our use effect, basically we're waiting to see if any of these state values change. And then the first thing we're going to say, if we're in the process of loading or we're already authenticated, then don't continue on with this function. Basically just return right there. If we're in the opposite stages of these two, let's say we're not authenticated, then we definitely want to await and then log in with redirect. So if we're loading, we're probably in the process of setting up. So hold on. If we're authenticated, then don't redirect them. So in this case, we're saying log in with redirect. Again, this is not the pop-up. That's log in with pop-up option. This is log in with redirect. We're going to pass it basically where we want it to redirect to after it's redirected. So here I'm putting in saying just whatever I'm at right now, that's where I want you to send me back to. And then the magic really that controls all this is if we're authenticated, then we return children. If not, return null. So this is where we can wrap this around our page and have it just not render anything unless we're authenticated. So once we have that in there, we can add this stuff to the account page.
Oh, yeah.
So inside the account page, well, first of all, do you want to add the navigation in here that you created?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Just going to, where am I? Okay.
Yeah.
Just going to add the, uh, I should have imported this first, but yeah, just going to import that. Oh, oh, that's already done.
Oops.
Can you see that?
Uh, no, I don't see it. Where are you at? Let's see.
Oh,
You're in the index page right now?
mm-hmm.
So yeah, you just gonna copy that and put it in the account page.
Yeah, I'm on the account page.
Okay.
Let me see.
Might need to do a refresh on our
Yeah, just
live
the
stream.
VS Code, or maybe just add it in, because
Okay, I can
just
add it.
so we don't waste time.
All
Oh,
right, so let's import our navigation.
yeah, yeah.
Components.
Components.
All right, cool. So we got that. Let's throw this in just here at the top.
The navigation.
Whoops.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, we have our login option just like on home.
Yeah.
All right, so now we can get rid of this stuff and add our protected route. So I'm going to bring in the protected route stuff. Okay. If you remember, the protected route was doing a loading check already for us, basically checking to
Yeah.
see if it's loading or not. So we don't need this anymore.
Yep.
And we don't need that loading. Our navigation did the log in, log out button, so we don't need to worry about logging in or logging out anymore.
Logging out. Yeah.
Okay, so we can get rid of these two.
So we.
And then this is doing a check, right? Our page is saying if we're authenticated, show this. If we're not, show that. Well, now we don't really
Yeah.
need to do authentication inside of here. We have this protected route code that's basically checking to see if we're authenticated anyways to hide this page or not. So what we can
Yeah.
do is really just remove all of this.
And we need to wrap it in the protected routes.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's do that just up here at the top. We'll say protected route. Move this down to the bottom. Cool. So now this is the children, and we don't care about that anymore. Great. And you'll notice that we have our cool Gatsby themed login experience here.
Yep.
But just to kind of show that one more time, like if I go here and I'm trying to protect this page so that no one can access it unless they're logged in, notice that I don't have it in my nav, but that doesn't mean like people can't be sneaky and try to hit a API or a route. So if I just go example account or not example account, account as is, the page will show nothing. You didn't see our nav, right? We didn't see our text. It will only show instantly redirect us to this page.
Yeah.
Where now I can log in and it's going to redirect me back to this page. So now I'm able to see, so now I'm able to see my JSON stuff. I'm able to see this stuff while protecting
your user,
this page and this user information.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's super easy. Again, looking at this protected route code, so we've got it's very like all of this. What I really like about Auth0 is that all of this code is just abstracted away. All you have to do is you have all this stuff at your fingertips. You can use your custom hook, pull it in there, and then you can just go crazy protecting everything and adding stuff. And then inside of your dashboard of your Auth0 account, like you can go add even more stuff like audiences and rules and hooks. And as you'll see next week with Obinna and James, you can actually use authorization and protect API, making sure that people have access to certain resources. Yeah, and like
Awesome.
James says, like there is definitely a free tier. You get up to 7,000 active users. So, uh, you know, yeah. So, is there anything else about Gatsby that you want to showcase here before we wrap
Oh
up?
yeah, for sure. We could. So we have like a really cool feature that we just launched called Incremental Builds, which is like a really awesome way to like build Gatsby sites and like reduce build times for like sites for Gatsby sites. So when you like usually build times will usually take, so for example, if you implement like a simple change in your for example your blog, it doesn't need to like rebuild your application from like start. It just builds up the like the little parts that you have edited. So yeah, so that's really really awesome. So please check out incremental builds, like if you're using like Gatsby Gatsby sites, that'd be really awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's cool. Obviously, and then recipes too, right? Like Gatsby recipes, that they're
Yeah,
still in the beta.
recipes for sure. So we're still like I said earlier, we're still like working on recipes. It's still like in an experimental stage, but like we're trying to like implement a lot of like other stuff on it. So yeah, please check it out. Contribute. We there's a I need to find the link.
To the recipe specific.
Yeah, to the launch thing.
Well, while you're
We'll probably
why
add it in show notes.
well, you can find that while I'll talk about some stuff in Auth0. So, some
Oh,
cool
awesome.
things with Auth0. Like it was recently announced, but they just had refresh token rotation. If you're interested in learning a little bit more, like what that is, I know it's huge for. It's been something that's been asked about for a long time, and so that's recently came out here in April. So I'll post in the chat about that. So take a look at that. And then also, some people on my team here at Auth0 recently created something called Avocado Labs, which is basically just like an online content sharing platform. I'll post a link in there as well. It's recently
Yeah.
just started out with some speakers, and then I know there's a lot of work that's gone into it, but again, basically it's just a platform where people can come together and share content about web technologies, and you can follow them on Twitter. It's Avocado Labs to stay up to date on some of those products.
I just added like the link
Oh, cool.
to how to add your own recipes in the chat. So
Sweet.
yeah.
Yeah, let me pull that up really quick.
Oh, someone is asking incremental builds will help reduce my Netlify build times. Yeah, for sure. Like if you use incremental builds like with Gatsby using Gatsby Cloud, it should have like a faster build time than Netlify builds. Um can you get incremental builds locally or you have to, so you right now it's a feature on Gatsby Cloud. So yeah, that's like the good way to use, that's like the best way to use Gatsby incremental builds. So yeah.
And so Brad says that should tie into service function authentication. Oh, he's talking to James. Okay.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Cool. Well, that's all we had today. Again, adding authentication is super easy to Gatsby. As you can see, run this recipe. As of right now, that's what we're using until
Yeah.
recipes get a little more fleshed out, and we can add Auth0 as official recipe. But you can use this one. I'll post it again in the chat. If you want to add it to your app today, you know how to do it now. Just run this, and then you create your Auth0 account, add that stuff. But if you want to work with
Yeah.
the code that James and I are going to be working with today and for next week, this is kind of the starting point of that. And the master has everything already all done. So, yeah, that's all I have. Unless there's any
Yeah.
other questions from chat, or if you want to say anything else, but I think we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I really just want to stress on like that. So you've seen how we could add like authentication to like Gatsby sites, and like it goes like you could also do like other interesting stuff like payments, adding like CMSs. So like I'm trying to like change the narrative of Gatsby is like just for like creating blogs. So we could do like whatever it is you can do with like React, you can do that with Gatsby, but like it's like faster and easier to like implement. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, great. Well, thanks everyone for coming today. It was fun, and
Yeah.
tune in next week to Gatsby's stream to catch the part 2 of this one.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
See ya.
Bye, everyone. All right.